So welcome to Seed Starting 101. So this is a very basic primer into seed starting indoors. My background in seed starting, when I first started at the Lisle Library District, I was the person in charge of the seed library. So this was in 2015 until about 2019, which it was taken over by a phenomenal colleague of mine who was doing wonderful things with it. I will say that she has added way more seed varieties than I think I can ever imagine and has done a great job at maintaining it and keeping it stocked for all of you. So with that said, I'll go ahead and go forward. So what will be covered is why seed start, selecting seeds, seed starting, potting on, so on and so forth. I will say just to kind of relieve some pressure and also just to kind of get you in that mindset, you are starting a new hobby or you're starting and learning something new. And what you need to do is ask for grace for yourself. You're going to make mistakes. Things aren't going to go the way you want them to, and of course, rabbits, raccoons, all type of wildlife might get to your vegetables. Even a wet summer or a wet growing season might also destroy the hard work that you used or that you created or you put into your garden. Keep that in mind and just grant yourself some grace. What you want to do is take lessons from this. And I feel that your failures give you more to understand and learn about both yourself and of the gardening process. You might ask yourself, why do you want a seed start? And we'll go ahead and start with cost. And I have a little asterisk there for a reason. Even with equipment, it's cheaper to start from seed than purchasing mature plants. And even with the initial costs, in the long run, if you're going to continue this hobby or if you're going to continue seed starting, it's going to be cheaper in the long run versus purchasing mature plants, such as mature tomato plants from Home Depot or the Growing Place or Wayman Makers, whichever you purchase your phenomenal plants from. Control. You're going to understand what you're planting and what you're using on your plants. When you get plants from either a big box store or from some other third party, you don't know what they're using, or sometimes they might even not tell you what type of variety of tomato or plant it is, so that you can collect seeds and maybe propagate in the next growing season. So you have greater control over your plants. Experience. You get to understand the agricultural and labor process used to grow food and also beautiful flowers. When I was first given the responsibility of the seed library, I took it upon myself to start learning how to seed start, and boy, was it frustrating. I ran into a couple of things that I will also discuss that hopefully you will avoid, or at least recognize as trouble spots in your plants. But it's also a very neat hobby. And like I said, it gets you to understand the process of growing food. And of course, why you want to seed start, experiment. Once you understand seed starting and cultivating plants and all of that, you get to experiment with scheduling, trying new varieties of plants, and you get to kind of, once you understand the growing process, you can kind of modify it to both your garden schedule and to your schedule as well. Give me a second here. So we'll go ahead and start with selecting seeds. So when you select seeds, you want to have a conversation with yourself and ask yourself, what do you want to eat? So if you're not a hot food enjoyer like myself, then why are you growing peppers? If you absolutely hate tomatoes, then why are you growing tomatoes? And if you're not a fan of lima beans or peas, why are you growing peas? Grow things that you want to eat from your garden. This way it gets you excited. I'll jump to the third part. Plant what excites you. Of course, I talked about plants that you can, or rather vegetables and vegetables and fruits that you can eat. Also think about flowers that you want to enjoy. Maybe you have, maybe you want to grow pollinators because you're very conscientious about the plight of the monarch butterflies, and maybe you want to provide food for our wonderful pollinators that will pollinate and continue our food cycle. And pardon, and what you want to also select seeds is based on what your garden can handle. Um, for example, are we going to grow avocados in Illinois? Absolutely not. By the time they get mature enough, boom, we get hit with our Midwestern winters, are also very temperamental spring. As you saw, we went from beautiful 70s, 65-degree weather to snow, to sleet and ice, back to 38-degree weather. And now I hear that we're going to go back to our 70s to 60s soon, but not before a line of storms of very rainy weather. So be cognizant of what your garden can handle. Through the USDA, uh, it maps out the United States into growing zones. These are just zones that measure the extreme temperature from one end to the other, from hot to cold, based on like the most extreme temperature from both ends and the lengths of that. So you'll find if you go to USDA hardiness, a hardiness chart, you'll see a multicolored United States with different growing zones. This could be helpful on the back of seed packets, which we'll discuss in a little bit. On the back of your seed packets, sometimes it will mention ideal growing zones, just to help you narrow down what seeds you want to plant in your garden. Once you figure out what you want to eat, what your garden can handle, and ultimately what excites you, you want to select seeds that are open pollinated or heirloom. You want to make sure that the seeds that you're getting are the seeds that are going to propagate to the fruit or the flower that you're getting. Sometimes you'll get some seeds from a friend, and they're like, "Oh, here's some random seeds. I think they're tomato plant, kind of crossed with some other tomato plants." You might get a weird offshoot of that tomato that might not be true to type. It might not be the same as the parent plant from which it came from. And getting heirloom or open pollinate seeds allows you to grow the same seed and to expect the same thing for each growing season, or at least the best that you can for each growing season. And then here are two lists of easy vegetables and easy annuals to start indoors. I won't get into them, but with selecting seeds, a couple of websites that I enjoy getting seeds from is seedsavers.org. Seed Savers Exchange, which is seedsavers.org, is based out of Decorah, Iowa, and they have a wide variety of heirloom seeds from vegetables, fruits, flowers. And what's great is they are open pollinated. They are run as a non-for-profit organization, and that wants to kind of continue these heirloom seeds from going extinct. And they carry a wide variety of tomatoes and vegetables and flowers. Another one that you can order from is rareseeds.com. This is the Baker Creek Seed Company. They've been around for quite some time. Both of these, if you can also request a catalog from both of them, from both of these companies, and they're free, and they have very beautiful photographs of seeds that are coming through for their growing season and that you can order for your garden. Both of these catalogs are absolutely beautiful and colorful and just well organized. So that's rareseeds.com and seedsavers.org, two companies that I recommend, and two companies that we use for a seed library. Okay, so now that you have your seeds, so say that you got seeds from rareseeds.com or seedsavers.org, what you want to do is read the seed packets. I have this little photograph right here is from a seed packet that you would get from seedsavers.org. It will tell you when to start indoors, which is 8 weeks before the last frost. Let's go ahead and pause here and discuss the last frost. The last frost is the latest that we will that it will hit a particular temperature, or you will endure a frost in our area the latest in the year. It's 8 weeks from now, so I think it's sometime in the beginning or in the middle of May would be our last frost. After that, it would be an ideal time to plant into the garden. The garden will not be as cold or as inhospitable to plants or greenery. You can also do in your area, you can Google, and I'm so sorry to say Google, but you can Google your zip code and last frost, and it will give you the approximate date of the last frost. From your last frost date, you want to go either 8 or 6 weeks, depending on what the package is telling you. That way, by the time you grow your seeds, and by the time you reach the last frost, you should be ready to plant the items that you've been growing indoors into the ground. So one thing that the seed packets will tell you is when to start indoors, from germination period when you plant the seed in soil, how long it will until it sprouts, and then when you get to the point of planting outdoors, how much distance between both plants, say like two pepper plants or two tomato plants, to spread them apart. So here 12 or 24 inches apart, and what type of sunlight, either full sun. Tomatoes and peppers are quite hungry for the sun, so um, it will tell you what type of sunlight to give your plants once you put them into the ground. We'll also talk about type of sunlight when you seed start. And we'll also talk about how far you should sow your seeds when you seed start. If for whatever reason your package um, does not give you how deep to plant your seeds, a good rule of thumb is twice the size of your seed. So say that if you have a tomato plant, say a tomato seed, you want to bury it about twice the length of the seed into the soil. Some I believe like some herbs or even some, I'm trying to remember that plant, some very tiny seeds that almost resemble like pepper. All you have to do is just sprinkle it onto the soil and do a dusting of soil to cover those seeds, and that's about it for the very peppery, very tiny minuscule seeds. So again, it give you planting considerations like time, soil type, spacing, and date to maturity. So now that we have our seeds, let's also talk about our equipment that you'll need. Of course, you'll need soil. If you're starting out, use pre-mixed seed starting mixes are the best. The reason why we want to use something that's pre-bagged is because we want it to be sterile and free from any disease or any possible funguses. And we'll talk about that later on as we talk about troubleshooting our seed starting. I know more advanced people or people who are a bit more frugal, what they'll do is they'll grab soil from their garden, and what they'll do is they will screen it out, they'll sift it for the bigger chunks, and what they'll do is they'll lay it in a layer on a baking tray and bake their soil to get rid of those funguses or diseases from the soil. If you're just starting out, I would discourage this. If it's something that you're interested in doing, I highly recommend that you do some research on sterilizing soil in an oven. Pots and trays. You can purchase these from stores or make your own. Because you're starting out, I would recommend getting those neat little hexagonal trays from whichever gardening store you'd like, including the big box ones. I'll tell you why in just a little bit when it comes to watering. Um, a light source. So look around in your house and find a sunny area. This is where you kind of want to place your tray of seed starts in the sun, and other things that you might want. Or, sorry about that. Let me go back to light source. Say that you have a very poor light source. Say that maybe you live in an apartment and your apartment faces some other a direction that's very dreary, or let's face it, maybe your home has just poor lighting. You can always get a grow lamp or a grow light if you like. This would be incredibly beneficial to a successful seed start. These range anywhere between $20 to $40. There is a fun store called Brew and Grow in Bolingbrook. Again, it's called Brew and Grow. And not only do they have beer making supplies, they also have gardening supplies. And one of the things that they sell are these really intense, really crazy looking grow lights. So if you're going to become if you're a serious hobbyist or you want to become serious about seed starting, you can invest in one of those. I think those go from like $100 to $500 for a grow light, for kind of a fancy schmancy grow light. Another thing that you might want to consider is a small fan. This can be like a handheld pocket one that you can get from the dollar store or from a convenience store, to encourage airflow. And I'll talk about why you want airflow in just a little bit, or once we get to the troubleshooting part of our presentation. So as I was talking about, so of course, you can always do these seed trays. I like these seed trays because I have a tendency to want to make sure that there's a seed in every tray. And I just like dividing, compartmentalizing everything in the seed tray. You can also use an egg carton. The thing with the egg carton is you want to make sure that you poke a hole in each little receptacle that you have seeds in, just so that we get proper drainage. I did talk about newspaper pots. There are newspaper pots that you can make. You can upturn a soup can, or what is it, a Coke can, or a beverage can, and form a pot on the end of the soda can. With these, you want to make sure that when you plant them into your garden, you want to make sure that you plant the whole newspaper. The newspaper acts as kind of a wick. So if you leave the newspaper out exposed into the elements, if you were to plant them directly into the ground, it'll act as a wick and will suck up all the moisture from your plant. So make sure that if you do go about the newspaper route, that you make sure that you bury your newspaper pot completely. And of course, I have an old-fashioned fan, but of course you can use a fan that you got from the dollar store, or even a fan from the thrift store, and you just want a nice subtle breeze. And I'll talk about why you want that in the troubleshooting part. So what you want to do once you get to the planting step is you have your soil, you have your tray, you have the seeds that you want to plant. You want to place your seed into another container. Um, or sometimes what I'll do is I'll get super lazy, and I have a wash sink in the basement, and I'll put the bag of soil in the wash sink. in the bag and just run some water through it. What I want to do is moisten the soil a day before I want to plant. This is just to get it to moisten up the soil, and the day will allow it to just evaporate any excess moisture from the soil. Then the next day, what I will do is I will gently pack the soil into the containers. We don't want to pack it so hard that it discourages root growth. So once you put the soil in, just a gentle pat will do. And then you want to plant your seeds at the depth recommended by your seed package. And of course, a rule of thumb, if say that you got your seeds from a very garden savvy person who tells you, oh yes, these are, I believe, home mortgage tomatoes, which is the name of a tomato, and you want to do X, Y, and Z. Again, plant the depths at twice the size of the seed. Once you do that, you want to then pack gently the seed and the soil for proper contact with each other. Again, not too hard to discourage plant growth, or rather root growth. And of course, once you've planted your seeds in the container, you want to water. Here's a nice little tip. You want to bottom feed your seed starts and throughout the whole process of growing your seeds. Let me go back to this. The great thing about these little cell containers, what I like to do is I will sacrifice one little compartment. I won't put any soil or seeds in one of the compartments. And what I will do is I will deposit water in that little in this little hole here. These seed trays, another thing about these seed trays is they come in three parts. One of them is the plastic lid, which you can use to encourage an appropriate sprouting environment. The tray itself that has the little receptacles, containers for your seeds and your soil, and a pan underneath that allows for drainage. That pan also allows you to hold water. So what I'll do is I will pour water into one of these, usually a corner, and this will allow me to make sure that I pour it at a responsible level. So sometimes I'll pour it until about half an inch to 3/4 of an inch of water, just to give it enough water. And from there, I will bottom feed from here. This gives us a couple of advantage when you bottom feed. One, it discourages excessive moisture on the seed tray. When you get excessive moisture on the seed tray, this and it gives you a warm environment. What tends to happen is you get fungal or sometimes a disease encouragement on these trays. And this is very bad for the seeds. You get something called damping off. So what happens is, and it comes in a variety of ways. Say that you're at the part where your seeds are starting to sprout, but all of a sudden you see that the tips are starting to dry out, or it looks dry and desiccated, although you've been watering and and it has had plenty of sun. If it's starting to kind of go downhill or wilt, that's a great indicator that it's experiencing something called damping off. You might also look at the soil and see that it looks like there is a smattering of dust or mildew. That's also an indication of damping off. That's something that we want to discourage. And two things that we can do to discourage this is one, by bottom feeding, and two, by having a light breeze from a fan. So this is where the fan comes in, and also does something else as well, which I'll discuss later. Um, Again, you can also use a spray bottle if you'd like. Once you do a spray bottle, I would say gently go around any of the plastic parts that have excessive water with a towel and wipe it off, just so that we can discourage any growth of bacteria or mildew or fungus that can be detrimental to our seeds. So I'll go ahead and stop right here. Do we have any questions so far? If not, I'll go ahead and continue. I'll continue on. So feel free to type that in the chat or the Q&A section. Give it another minute. So again, as I said in the beginning, give yourself some grace. Take time. Don't freak out. Don't rush. Take your time. It's a new hobby. It's something new. You want to enjoy it. You want to enjoy the process, the neat feel of the soil, the fact that you got to pick the things that you want to grow in your garden. Throughout this whole process, just be cognizant of that you're growing something, you're participating in kind of agricultural life cycle, and you're learning about kind of the agriculture and labor of growing your own foods as well as plants in the garden from seed, from this tiny minuscule thing into something huge and magnificent. All right, so actually I'll go back just a slide. So now that we have everything planted, congratulations. Make sure, I didn't put this in the slide, make sure if you're going to use those little hexagonal trays, you label what you planted. So make sure that you label, like I've planted jalapenos or traveler's jalapeno on this side. And what is it? I think it's what is it? Mortgage lifter tomatoes on this side. Make sure you label everything so you understand what you have and what to be cognizant of, and to understand which one from your seed packet to see the rate of germination. And I know that if you were to plant from this, the massive little container, you're thinking to yourself, wow, am I really going to have, this one is 72, and say that if we divide that into tomatoes and peppers, am I really going to grow 36 tomatoes and 36 jalapeno peppers? The answer is no. You're going to lose a couple because some of them will not germinate. It's just the luck of the draw. Maybe you get a seed that wasn't fully developed. Maybe you get a seed that maybe didn't have enough contact in the soil. Maybe you get a seed that was it was just dormant and maybe dead. There's a number of reasons, but from the 36 plants that you grow, you might get a handful at the end of seed starting. Or you might look out and have 36 plants of each, and then you can go ahead and pass those out to friends and family in your block or wherever. So label everything. You can use little plastic plant stakes. You can write it directly on the tray. And then once you do that, in order to encourage some type of sprouting, such as with these seed trays, or with, I know some people have used the little plastic salad containers, and they'll sprinkle soil and make holes in the bottom and close it to encourage a kind of moist, warm environment to encourage sprouting of the seeds. You will go ahead and dome your seed tray. You can always, with an egg carton, you can always close it just to provide a little more warmth. And once you get them to sprout, usually within about 7 to 14 days, the back of your seed packet will tell you when this will take place. Once you get them to sprout, what you want to go ahead and do is take off that lid and allow them to continue growing That way, having the fan on and having them in a very sunny area will help them continue to grow. So you've been successful. It's been, say that it's been let's go with like 14 to 21 days. You've been incredibly successful. Um, and you're starting to notice, or maybe, sorry about that. It's starting to sprout in 14 days, maybe a month or two later. You notice that maybe your plants are starting to outgrow their trays. And you're wondering to yourself, when do I need when will the tray become too big, or when do you think I should probably put this in a bigger pot? And that's a great question. So what you want to start doing is thinking about potting on. So if you see that your plants are starting to outgrow their tray, you can go ahead and this is where the newspaper pots come in, or if you like, you can use larger pots that you buy from your nursery or from your big box store like Home Depot or Menards. And you can go ahead and do something called potting on. And potting, when you want to start potting on is, of course, when they start outgrowing their container and when the first set of true leaves appear. So when you first start getting sprouting seeds, you'll notice that they'll have these little really neat oval seeds. These are sort of the seed leaves. These help provide um, with photosynthesis, providing the sprout with food and light. And then you'll also get a second set of leaves. If you see here in the picture, you'll see those little seed leaves. They're kind of smooth and oval-ish, like the other leaf is on the other side. And then you get these seeds that almost look like, hey, those look like tomato leaves. This is sort of going, it will start to sprout the leaves that the plant will have. So those look like tomato leaves and it'll gradually become tomato-y. So when you start to get those two leaves, that's a good time to do what's called potting on. And what you're going to do is you're going to prepare a larger container with moistened potting soil. Potting soil is a little bit hardier and will provide some nutrients, or rather just a medium for your plants to continue growing. And what you want to do is create a hole in the middle of the pot to accommodate the plant that you're taking out from your smaller pot into your larger pot. And what you want to do is very gently dig out until you find a root ball. Basically, it's a ball of roots. And once you have your ball of roots and once you've loosened up soil around that ball of roots, what you want to go ahead and do is gently grabbing one of the leaves, gently lift up. You can use a pencil or your other hand to help lift up the little transplant. And then what you want to do is put that transplant into, or the little seedling into the new pot, and then cover with soil and water. Of course, you want to bottom feed with water. If you do spray bottle, make sure that you wipe off any excessive moisture. And from there, when you do potting on, or whenever you move a plant from one pot to another, it does shock the plant. It sort of, think about going from like, uh, going from a nice, lovely hot tub into the cold Midwestern air. It's going to shock your system. So what you want to do is water it, provide it with some sun, and try not to disturb it once you transplant it. Actually, let's go back just a wee bit to seed starting. I did talk about watering from the bottom. And what you want to do is, as you see your seeds growing, take note of any color changes. Um, specifically in the soil. If once you look at your soil, wet soil tends to have the consistency of kind of like a neat, moist chocolate cake texture. And that means there's moisture in that cake, or not cake, there's moisture in that soil, which is great for your plants. Um, if it looks sandy, and almost like un ground coffee that hasn't been put through the machine, has the look of ground coffee, that might be a good time to add water for your plants. And what you want to do is similar to what I've mentioned before, is bottom feed, as this will create less moisture on surfaces that might encourage bacterial or fungal growth, or anything that might cause dampening off of your plants and kill your plants in the process. So let's go ahead. So you've potted on, and you're still giving it water, you're taking care of it, it's in a lot of sun. Great job. Now you've gotten to the point where it's past the frost state, and the temperature at night does not dip below, I believe, um, the perfect temperature to plant is if the temperature at night doesn't dip below, I think 40 or 50 degrees. That is a good time to plant, and it's past the frost state. Then you might want to think about garden planting. Um, of course, these are just guidelines, so please follow the directions on your packet. Usually it'll specify when to garden plant, when days lengthens, or when it reaches a particular temperature. When you do garden plant, going from your pots to your garden, the ideal day to plant would be on an overcast day. So if it just recently rained, or if it's super cloudy, that would be incredibly helpful for plant, because again, we are going to stress your plant out as we did when we placed the plants into the container. And of course, what you want to do is gradually introduce your plant to outside weather. We've basically given the plant a wonderful upbringing. It's been provided for, it's been taken care of. Now we got to take it into the real world. So before you garden plant, you need to do a process called harden off. So what you want to do is gradually introduce your plants to the fluctuating temperatures of outside. So the first couple of days, what you want to do is take your tray of seedlings or a tray of plants, and maybe keep them outside for a couple of hours under protected shade, and then bring them back in at night. And then increase this time over until you can leave them outside overnight when the temperatures dip below favorable for plants. And this does a couple of things. It does it's kind of controlled stress. You're helping your plants build up to the outside world, giving them the ability to be hardier and to harden off and prepare themselves for their next journey in the garden. And so now that you plant, now that you've planted in the soil, you're going to want to water. And or actually, we'll go back a little bit further. So you'll get your pots with your plants, and what you're going to do is gently squeeze around the pot if you have the plastic ones, or even if you have the newspaper ones. Gently squeeze around just to loosen up the soil from the pot. And then what you want to do is empty out, don't grab the plant by the stem. What you want to do is empty out the pot into your hand, so that kind of a big lump of soil falls into your hand. And then you want to dig a hole to the appropriate depth and plant it into your garden. And then pat soil around the plant and water. Again, this will help with shock. And follow instructions say that if you're growing multiple peppers, to space it out from other plants as you like, or rather as the plant instruction, as the seed packet instructs. And water and take care of it. And of course, because this plant grew up in ideal conditions, these are some plants that you want to keep an eye out for. Maybe you want to water a little more, maybe you want to water a little less if it becomes too droopy. Completely just once it's in the garden, pay attention to it, and then after a couple of weeks it should do its thing and provide and fruit. It should provide tomatoes and peppers, and of course that's if the rabbits and wildlife doesn't get to it first. The number of times that people who have checked out seeds from us, by the way, we do have a seed library, so you can check out seeds from us. You can check up to 5 seeds per library card. And you keep them for 6 months, and you can return them after the 6 months period, even if you don't grow and save seeds. So going back to this, so now they're in the garden, and now it's you leave it up to the world to and yourself to protect and take care of your plants. Of course, hungry rabbits and other wildlife might get to it, but don't be discouraged, because you've taken on a wonderful endeavor of caring and growing plants and gardening. So congratulations. And then on the packet, usually it will tell you 90 days from what is it, from sprouting, or 180 days from sprouting, it will start to produce fruit or flower. So it does take some time, a couple of months from the time you plant it to the time you see fruit emerge for that plant to do its thing. So now for some troubleshooting. Or actually, I'll stop here for a second. Do we have any questions at the moment? I know that we've covered a lot of material, and yeah, it can be a little intense. So do we have any questions? Again, still reinforcing this. It's something new. It's a learning experience, and with learning experiences, there's always failures. But from those failures, you do learn, especially for individuals that were so successful in growing their plants into maturity, only to have wildlife completely destroy and munch on their plants. They'll probably think about putting up some type of chicken wire around. For some that had tomato plants that just fell over, for tomato plants to get large and unwieldy, maybe they want to trellis it next time. And maybe they've planted too early and were hit with another frost and completely killed their plants. Maybe they learned to plant maybe a little later past the frost rate, just to ensure that their plants survive. I see that we don't have any questions at the moment, so I'll go ahead and continue on. Feel free to put those questions in the chat or in the Q&A feature if you'd like. So we're going to go into troubleshooting. Here are 2 things that have popped up. Leggy plants. So say that you're growing seeds, and then all of a sudden you get these little seedlings here. They're sort of really tall, spindly, and they're kind of flopping around on top of each other. A couple of things is happening here. This is the result of plants, a couple of things. One, the result of plants reaching for more light. So maybe your plant is not in an area with sufficient light. That's why it's sort of straining itself to get more light to produce the necessary energy to grow. Another thing is maybe the environment is too conducive to growth, that it just continues growing until it falls over. If you have a warming pad underneath the seedling, that would be a best time to remove the warming pad from your seedling tray. If you're still doming, stop. Once the seedlings sprout, remove that dome and allow the seedlings to do their work and grow hardier by doing what they do best, which is growing. And again, a fan will help with this as well. A little bit of stress is perfectly fine. It allows you to, um, or for plants, and also for people, a little bit of stress doesn't hurt. But it's to the point that it's too much that it's yeah, it becomes a problem. So you want to introduce a fan, and what the fan will do is it will add a light jostling. I would say maybe just a gentle wind to the plants, and this will encourage the stems to grow hardier and not as spindly. So you do have an opportunity to recover your plants from the spindly a spindly look of your plants. Of course, the best thing to do is do your best to discourage spindliness by providing adequate sunlight and having a fan going very lightly over the plants to discourage damping off and to also strengthen the stem of the plants. And of course, we were talking about damping off. Damping off is a fungus caused by two damp conditions that encourages growth, not only of the seed, but also of weird bacteria. This is why it's important to have sterile soil. Um, Most of the time, the bag soil will be sterile or at least not have the impurities as the soil from your garden. And this is why it's important to bottom feed or to remove any excess moisture from your tray to prevent any type of favorable conditions for fungus or bacterial or any type of fungal growth. And again, a fan is always helpful because it circulates air, and it does hamper a little bit of growth, but it also allows you to prevent damping off, as well as bottom feeding when possible, or bottom feeding your plants. As I mentioned before, using that seedling tray, you can always pour water to a specific level until about half an inch to 3/4 of an inch. If you decide to go with the pot route and your pot has a little drainage hole in the bottom, what some people will do is dunk their pot into a bowl of water and let the plant suck up as much water as it needs. Um, or you can always pour water into a tray with your newspaper um, seedlings and allow those seedlings to soak up as much water as possible. So with damping off, always use a fan and discourage excessive moisture by cleaning or drying off any of the areas. So we're at the end of the program. A couple of resources that would be incredibly helpful for you as a fledgling gardener is the Illinois Master Gardeners Hotline. This is in the PDF. These I know for the Illinois Master Gardeners are incredibly helpful. If you call them or send them images of the plant that you're having trouble with, they'll tell you what's going on and how to correct that issue. Same with the plant clinic at Morton Arboretum. If say that you're encountering a problem where you don't know what's going on with your seeds, maybe your plants are growing well, but they're more yellow than green. What you can go ahead and do, and this is what I recommend that you do whenever you visit a garden place or anyone knowledgeable on plants, and you want to bring them the actual specimen or the actual plant, is go ahead and sacrifice one of your little seedlings, one of your plants, take them out of the soil and put them in a Ziploc bag. And then what you want to do is just then take them to Wanamakers or to a growing place or to a Downers Grove and ask them what's going on. And maybe they can recommend by giving you a product off the shelf or what you can do differently in your growing, in your gardening. Two books that I recommend. The basis for this PowerPoint presentation, Starting Seeds by Barbara Ellis. We do have a copy available in the library. It's also available through the Hoopla platform, which you can use your library card and PIN to access. Another book that we have is Starting and Saving Seeds by Julie Thompson Adolph. Another great book for starting and saving seeds. Another website is the extension for the Illinois, not Illinois Master Gardeners, but the University of Illinois Extension School. This blog has a number of articles pertaining to gardening, home gardening, and whatnot. With that said, I'll go ahead and turn it over to questions. So we have one. Someone's asking, are there any library books with info on household items to nourish plants like eggshells? Most definitely. I know that I can be more than happy um, to look that up and see if there are any. I know that there have been, I haven't looked into this, but people will crush up either eggshells for either nitrogen or potassium, specifically for tomatoes. I can look into that and see if we do have books on that. I feel like we should, because that's a good low tech, simple, resourceful way to introduce particular minerals or vitamins to a plant that would otherwise not receive them. So yeah, that's a good question. And I will add that during our renovation, our selection of books is quite tiny. However, we are more than happy to look up books and with your Lisle library card, order them from you for another library. It may take a week to maybe a little longer, depending on how quickly and how fast the other library can send it to us. And actually, I'll probably send you, I'll send the individual who asked that question an email with some potential books about that. Because I know we do have someone who grows roses in our library who will hunt us down and ask for our ground coffee, for our used ground coffee, because she uses that to nourish her rose plants, and provide with either nitrogen or potassium, some type of mineral to help it grow. Any other questions? So as a closing remark, and I think I'm driving this, like I kind of beating this um, over your head multiple times and kind of like a broken record. Again, if this is your first time seed starting or first time gardening, please extend yourself some grace. You're doing something new, and with something new, it's always It's always an adventure. It's always it's always a learning curve. But with each phase, please enjoy the process. Please also learn from your failures, or rather, I should say, learning opportunities, and you'll get it right. Not to worry. Thank you, everyone. With that said, I'll go ahead and leave you to the rest of your evening. Again, these resources, the Illinois Master Gardeners Hotline, the Plant Clinic, the 2 books that were featured, including the one that's available through Hoopla Digital, and the website can all be very helpful to you. I absolutely love that the University of Illinois Extension School has such a robust, they have Illinois Master Gardeners and a garden helpline. So that's absolutely amazing. With that said, good luck, have fun, and remember, we do have a seed library, so feel free to check out seeds. It's 5 seeds per library card, and aside from that, good luck and have fun. Take care.